share a little vulnerability nugget, like throw something out there and see how that person responds. I think that vulnerability breeds vulnerability. So the more willing you are to go deep, the more willing they will be. And also see the reaction. And if it's not a match, it's okay. It's not personal.
Welcome back to the Healthy Parenting Handbook podcast. I'm your host, Katie Kimball from Kids Cook Real Food, and this podcast is all about giving you that parenting handbook that finally fills the gap. Remember when you first had kids, it was like, where's the handbook for this? Well, now you've got one. I bring together experts in the fields of health, parenting, nutrition, and more to give you the information you need to raise truly healthy, independent adults. My friends, parenting truly is the toughest and most rewarding job in the world. Thank you for joining me to consult this Healthy Parenting Handbook, your guide to raising kids intentionally. My guest today is Heather MacFadyen. She's the host of the popular parenting podcast, Don't Mom Alone, with more than 27 million downloads from across the globe. She's also the author of the books, Don't Mom Alone and Right Where You Belong. She finds great joy in connecting other women to mentors and experts through her podcast and speaking at live events with women across the country. Heather and her husband and their 4 teenage sons, mostly teenagers, live in Dallas, Texas. Learn more about her at heathermacfadyen.com. Today, we are going to talk about her first book, Don't Mom Alone, and the idea of connection being the solution to the isolation that so many moms feel. And quite honestly, post-pandemic, what so many humans are feeling in our hyper-connected technological world where we rarely connect as human beings. Oh, this is such an important conversation. I hope you love it. And I'd also ask you to leave a quick review, honest review on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast. That is so helpful for other people to find this podcast and the vast variety of speakers and information that it is my joy to bring to you. Thank you again for listening. Heather, thank you so much for joining us. I think talking about isolation is critical at many times in history, but especially the last few years and the next few years, because we haven't solved our problem yet. We're so glad you're here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Well, tell us your story. Your podcast, your book is called Don't Mom Alone. So how did you first become inspired to write online, start the podcast, communicate with the people, the moms out there? And what journey did God and your motherhood take you on through that process?
So actually, I wrote online on a blog first, back in the old Wild West of the blogging days, and it was called God-Centered Mom. And my hope there wasn't to elevate myself as if I was that. It was something I was trying to move towards and move away from other approaches I'd taken where it was child-centered. And then I got so burnt out, I went me-centered, like staying in bed until my husband left for work and groggily getting my coffee while my kids are asking for second breakfast. Hobbit shout out. And so I just finally was like, this is not working. Neither extreme is working, and landed on God-centered. But the challenge there, as I added more and more boys and my stress increased, so now I'm at 4 boys, and the people's impression of what God-centered mom meant, it was this pressure cooker that I felt like I was under. I felt like I was supposed to have it all right, get it all perfectly. We already have that pressure as moms to do everything perfectly. But when I had one of my friends calling me Mother of God as a joke, but it felt like a representation of what people were thinking. And then I had 4 uncontrollable boys that when I went out in public, for sure, something humiliating would happen out of my control. It just led to me feeling really alone because I started isolating from friends, either physically, like saying no to the play dates because they just weren't fun anymore. And moms of lots of little kids get that. Or even if I was with people, not really sharing the real, which to me is where loneliness is, if you can be around people but not really feel known. So that made me realize we needed to maybe pivot the show, and it coincided. I know we're going to talk about it later, but the podcast clubs, one of my listeners, she started taking the episodes, listening to them with her small group and discussing them like a book club. And we use the hashtag Don't Mom Alone. Like instead of you with your earbuds listening to the show by yourself, what if you used it as an excuse to get together with other people? That concept of not momming alone resonated so strongly that we ended up rebranding the whole show, which is terrifying as a business person, but definitely was more in line with my heart and my story and freed me up to not feel pressure anymore in that area.
We do feel enough pressure for sure. I remember in high school, I used to have a sign on my bedroom mirror that said, "Joy, Jesus first, others second, yourself third."
Yep.
Which is true, but it can't be yourself never, right? And it can't be others only when you're serving them, right? Like there has to be a very good balance. And it's interesting to hear you like go through that process and feeling extra pressure because of what you named your podcast. So,
right.
What a great shift to Don't Mom Alone. I think it's more needed. It's easier to say. And it is so needed. So why though? Why do you think so many moms try to go it alone? What is wrong with us, Heather?
Well, okay, here's what we did. We created these unattainable standards of what good mom means, and nobody told us that that's what it means. It does not mean signing your 18-month-old for soccer. It does not mean, the litany of things that we've decided. I know you do a cooking situation, but it doesn't mean you have to have your kids cook. It doesn't mean you have to homeschool. I'm sorry, homeschool moms. I'm going to offend everyone. I was homeschooled. Okay. I get the pressure my own mom was under. She grew her own food. She made her own pasta. These are amazing things that if that is your heart song, do those things. If that falls in line with your values, do those things, but don't do them to reach this unattainable standard of good mom, because then what happens? Everyone talks about mom guilt, right? If we go all psychology, guilt means I did something wrong, right? It's the feeling after you have actually done something wrong. My feeling is that when we feel quote unquote mom guilt, it's false guilt, because the thing we've done wrong is based on a standard that doesn't actually exist. It's a false standard that we're falling short of and feeling bad about. But what's really bad, and this is where the loneliness falls in, is we have the guilt, and shame loves to sit on the shoulders of guilt. And shame says, not only did I do the thing wrong, I didn't sign up my kid up for that thing, or I didn't, make my own sourdough. It's now I am wrong. It's an identity thing. It's not about the doing it is a full being and an identity. And shame isolates. Shame keeps us hidden. And that's what I was doing. I felt like when I would be out in public and you would see the chaos of my boys or how it would lead me to respond. I know we're going to talk about anger, to respond in a way I didn't want. That shame was like, nope, you shouldn't be around people. If they actually saw, if they actually knew, you would be rejected. And so I think that with moms, especially really high achieving moms who have very high standards for themselves, it can lead to a lot of isolation.
Do you feel like this has happened just in our modern society, perhaps because of the hyperconnectivity of social media and the internet and texting and everything? Like, did people have unattainable standards for themselves in the 50s?
I think we have to go back to the agricultural era to really say, okay, where have we gone wrong from here? Because I think even the concept of working outside the home moms and working stay-at-home moms, it's like that wasn't a differentiator back then. Everybody's working. One, women weren't allowed to go to school and get a traditional school-oriented job. But two, those women had to work all day long just to feed everybody.
Right. So once we go back 100, 150 years,
we're going way, way back. I mean, it's like, you want to talk about work. They're not sitting on the floor. They're not talking with their kids about their feelings. Like, I'm just saying, not that that becomes the standard, but I think we have gone so far in what makes a quote unquote good mom that we're running ourselves ragged. And I think there was natural connection points in other societies. I know in the 50s, I've talked to moms that grew up then and they weren't necessarily more connected. I know one of my mentors who's now with Jesus, she said that they had one car. Her husband would take it to work. So she was literally stuck at home and she just did her own intentional work of inviting a friend over and they would iron clothes together. You know what I mean? Like bring your clean laundry over and we'll fold together. I mean, she had to go out of her way. It wasn't necessarily happening naturally.
It's hard to imagine back, because if we go all the way to agrarian society, you might not have a neighbor for a mile or two, right? It may be impossible to have
but you would have aunts and uncles and grandparents and people who would meet emotional connection need, possibly.
Right. But you also had no one to compare yourself to.
Well, as far as the standard goes, yeah, you're just, even our moms, as far as like your handbook podcast in the name, they had Dr. Spock, right? In the Bible. That was it. And now we have all these experts. And I think information is at an all-time high, but wisdom is at an all-time low. And discernment. And that is why I encourage moms, like my book is not just have more friends, or it would be a friendship book. It's Don't Mom Alone, in that it is not all up to you to raise your kids. And we're going to talk about that in a bit. So you need God. You need a supernatural force, a divine being of some sort. You do need other women, but you need mentors.
Yeah.
You need people who've gone before to give that wisdom.
And I feel like we're starting to walk into, what is your central message that everyone needs to hear when you unpack Don't Mom Alone? And as you sort of walk through those different relationships, does the message work differently for toddler moms and teen moms, or do we all need the same things?
So I was just listening to Mel Robbins' podcast, and she was talking about friendships, and she was talking about the 3 pillars. It took a really long time to get to this point, so I'll just break it down for you right now. In friendship, you need proximity, timing, and energy. And she was saying she felt like it was easier to make friendships when her kids were little and there were natural proximal gatherings at the park, at sports when they were in elementary school. Timing wise, you're all on the same kind of schedules with naps and rhythms. People aren't out going partying, but then your energy mattered. And I think what I've noticed with friendships is friends who have the 1 or 2 kids, that can be true. And then they feel like a challenge when it comes to the middle school, high school years, because their kids are finding their own friends and they're kind of left like, okay, were those friends I made in the school year still my friends, or do I need to pivot? But my friends who have a lot of kids, it came down to time, as far as they're just so overwhelmed with their own family needs that it is hard to make time for friendships outside of the family.
And it's scary.
Oh, it's scary. Yeah, it's terrifying.
I will say from my own life, a couple of weeks ago, my middle school kid has been making some new friends and having some of them over. And so the mom will come to pick them up because, they're still in middle school. And when we chatted a little bit, and one of them I connected with on a lot of just topics and issues. And I said to my high school daughter, I said, I'm thinking I'd like to, try to make friends with her, but it's really scary. And she's like, that's weird, Mom. Also, why is it scary? I'm like, you just called me weird. That's why it's scary, because what adult says, I'd like to make a new friend? Like, it just doesn't seem socially acceptable, even though we all need to.
Yeah, it's one of these things that you have to take a risk of rejection.
Yes.
And you have to kind of, I think this was Mel Robbins' third point. She's talking about energy, like, are we coming in like really needy? I really need this friendship in order to be okay. And those of us with faith, we find that need of worth and value and love in God. And people relationships are just icing on the cake. But I think the energy we bring to that. Also, she said it took like 200 hours of proximal to make a really good friend.
Wow.
So maybe 50 hours to like kind of say, oh yeah, I really like this person. Anyway, so 200 hours. That's when I say use something else as like an excuse. So we said the podcast clubs were an excuse. Maybe it's you really like Mahjong, which is a fun tile game that we love to play here in Dallas. And you create a Mahjong group, book club group, but it doesn't even have to be that. But in your season, when you have more time, maybe that's what it is. Or you say, hey, you want to go on a walk? Because we're told at this age, we're supposed to walk all the time.
Right.
And it's got a finite end. It's not like hours and hours and hours. Let's just go walk whatever together. And I say, just give it another go. Like, it does require your initiation and taking that risk. But I always say that vulnerability, it's worth it to have these secure connections that will sustain you. And you don't know what seasons are coming up ahead. And I've just found the times when I've invested and been vulnerable after hitting rock bottom, I had a panic attack and ended up going to counseling and then got back into a small group and 12-step and some inner healing prayer. The friendships I made through that process of going from rock bottom and reconnecting with people was so needed, because then I went through a season where my mom had cancer and she lived with us. My dad passed away. I was like, so much was happening in my world. And I was incredibly grateful that I'd taken the time to foster relationships that I could rely on when my world was kind of falling apart.
That makes so much sense. You have to build those before you need them. Because like you said, if you come in needy, you're really unbalanced. And I have a new philosophy. I have a new prediction that 200 hours is compressed when you're going through something with someone, don't you think? Or when you share something really deep, whether that's your faith or, you both have kids who are sick at the same time. You know what I mean? Like if you're
like a shared connection of suffering or something that
deeper.
I think it also requires when you're with someone. So let's say you do take the risk and ask her to go on a walk or coffee or whatever it is, and make it fit in your schedule. If you have young kids, bring the kids, although they'll interrupt you over and over. But I say, share a little vulnerability nugget, like throw something out there and see how that person responds. I think that vulnerability breeds vulnerability. So the more willing you are to go deep, the more willing they will be. And also see the reaction. And if it's not a match, it's okay. It's not personal.
Right.
It's just like how we don't all want to eat at the same restaurant. It's not your flavor. It's not you. It's just not a match. And just keep trying.
Mm-hmm. But it is, I mean, we're talking about it takes a risk to get started. It honestly takes organization to just get it in the calendar more than once. And it takes some effort. What made things really tricky, Heather, and I love that your book came out in 2021. I actually had to look to see, as I was reading through it, I thought, is this as timely as it feels? Because, I know that published in 2021 means you started it before we knew the full impact of the pandemic. And yet it's perfect, nearly prophetic, right? The Surgeon General now says loneliness is an epidemic and that 50% of US adults are experiencing considerable levels of loneliness, which can affect physical, mental, and societal health. What? So you talk about the importance of connection. Your book came out in 2021. We so desperately need this. And I'm really curious how you have seen the world change mid and post pandemic, because you had all of these thoughts. You saw these needs pre-pandemic. How's the world changed?
Well, I did see a stat the other day that said people are going to less parties. That made me sad. Yeah, I bet this is a more complex issue than I could even summarize. I definitely think our brains have changed. That is causing some exhaustion and some decreased emotional capacity to do all that work you just said. I know for teens, preteens, some of my boys who are less engaged, I've been reading a book on the disengaged teen, and it's kind of like if it's harder, we're not going to do it. And putting yourself out there is harder than sitting at home and binge watching a show. It's harder than just staying home and having a couple cocktails is what I'm seeing people doing. It's harder to host that party and invite people, and their schedules are too full and they can't come. A lot of it is risk. I'm like telling people to gather people, and I invited all of my sons, the boys in his grade, their moms over for like a Galentine's. And I was thinking, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? My house is not what I want it to be. I have 4 boys. It's chaos. Why would I ever do this? And you know what happened is each mom was like, hey, could I bring Topo Chicos? Hey, could I bring some cookies? Hey, I mean, they each brought like one little thing, and I hardly had to buy anything. I just needed to show up with my space, and they stayed for hours and they chatted and they connected about this stage of parenting 7th grade boys. And it was such a reminder to me, like about the tension you can feel in putting yourself out there to host, but the massive reward when you do and the ripple effects of that.
I'm so glad that worked out well. When you started the story, I thought, oh, is she not going to say that no one showed up? Is she? Don't say no one showed up for like 2 people, But many showed up and they stayed. And that just speaks to the need. We do want this. We just don't want the idea of the work.
Yeah. Or the risk of the rejection. And I think that I go back as a believer, Jesus never asked us to do anything he wasn't willing to do first. And he risked full rejection. he came in a baby's body, which to me is the most vulnerable way to exist in the world. You're completely dependent on other people. And then he was actually rejected by many, it says. And he's like hung on a cross, completely naked, not with a little cute little towel on him like we sometimes depict. Completely vulnerable to the point of death. And I just think, wow, okay, can I put myself out there? And even though people have wounded me and I've had friendships or hard things, women can be mean, girls can be mean. We talk about that, right? Mean girls, classic. But I believe that even those things, I've prayed with women, we've walked through hard interactions, and I think there's even healing for those. So it's like, even if you are rejected, I believe that there's healing for that rejection. And so to not take the risk in fear of something that you could even be healed from is not doing us any good.
No, it sure isn't. We've talked a lot so far, Heather, about sort of the peer-to-peer relationships, but I know that you advocate for different forms or categories of relationships. Talk about that and why each one's important.
Yeah. So I kind of mentioned, the mentor, and I really feel like, to me, I'm thankful I'm in a community that's something people seek. There are mentors who are willing. And I don't know the ages of the people listening, but you're basically a mentor if you're one step ahead of somebody else. So if you have a 2-week-old, you're a mentor to the mom who's about to go into the hospital and deliver. If you have one kid, you're a mentor to someone who's still pregnant. I mean, it feels like a weighty word, but it honestly is just allowing someone to get some perspective and walking alongside with them. And you don't have to have done it perfectly to fulfill that role. I think so many women are like, no, my kids are a mess. They didn't turn out great. They're not walking with the Lord. They didn't get good jobs, so I can't mentor anyone. It's like, no, you still have walked a path I have not walked. And I would love your thoughts and insights on marriage, kids, development.
Do you use that word mentor? Like, have you ever asked someone, will you be my mentor? Or is it more like you're making friendships, but you know that you're going to learn some top-down information from someone who's a few steps ahead of you?
I don't think you have to use the word. I think if you see someone in your community, again, it requires you to get out of your house. If you see someone who you're like, wow, I really admire, it seems like we connect. We had a good conversation in the hallway at church, or you could say, hey, would you mind coming? If you have little kids or lots of kids, they're homeschooling, could you come over to my house and we could have tea or coffee or whatever, and we could chat for an hour? One time. Do not ask them to be your lifetime guide. Just one time. Don't even use the word mentor. Hey, I'd love to pick your brain on this. I'm really struggling with this. Be very specific on your request. Be very specific on making it easy for them or something that just fits in their schedule, and keep the how long it lasts loose. And if you're the one who's been asked to come over, when the time being together is coming to a close, say, hey, this was great. And if you really are interested, say, can we put a time on the calendar to meet again? Friends of mine who do that, like if we're out to lunch and they're like, oh, let's schedule our next before we even leave, I'm just always happy. And then it's on the calendar and it shows that they really want to spend more time with me. And yeah, that's my tip.
It's so nice. Like calendar skills, really. I know last summer, a friend and I were saying, oh, we never spend enough time together, blah, blah, blah. She works in a school, so her summer was much more open. I said, why don't we just put a day every week? And sometimes it won't work because summers be crazy. But if we just put like an hour walk in every week, and it was so lovely. It was so nice to get to connect with her. Probably like half the weeks of the summer.
Yeah.
We got to hang out, but
it's better than zero.
Yes. It's all about the calendar skills. So mentor is sort of the top down, getting information. Friendship would be the straight across beam. Are there any others? Like, does the spouse count in Don't Mom Alone?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You've got the person. Now, I totally get that marriages don't always last. And that is true for people who might be listening. But if you have a spouse involved in your parenting, that is a key part of not momming alone. And I've found over the years that whereas I dismissed my husband's opinion or thoughts on parenting because he's not reading the books, he's not listening to the podcast, I'm with the kids all day, I actually missed out because he provides a lot of perspective and great insight. And I feel like we're more collaborative now. We take walks on Saturday. Again, with the walking, another thing, we were walking before 2020 made it popular, but every Saturday we go and we walk the neighborhood. And that is when we side by side, we process our work, we process relationships, but we also process our boys and what's going on and what's needed. And I don't know, it just feels much more collaborative than it did when they were younger. And I'm very thankful, especially having 4 teens. It's like none of us know what we're doing, and the consequences feel bigger. And so I do need a partner. And
your husband used to be a teenage boy, and likely you did not. So he's
Thankfully
got some insight.
Yes.
Oh, Heather, what's the hardest part? We talked about actually a lot of hard, but what do you think is the hardest part about allowing other people to partner with you in parenting?
I think that we talked about the vulnerability, but I do think that letting people see where you've kind of messed up or where you're afraid. So it's easy to get together with a friend and just start complaining about the school your kids go to, or another kid who's being unkind to your kid. Or it's another thing to say, I actually am feeling afraid. I'm actually really sad. I'm really worried about how this kid is turning out. To be vulnerable with what the actual feeling you're having is, not the scenario, not how terrible everyone around you is, your spouse, your kids, but like how that situation is causing you to feel. Sometimes when I'm with a friend, I will ask that question, like when they're talking on and on about a situation. It's like, well, how'd that make you feel? And I think as moms, we're very aware of our kids' emotional state and very unaware of our own. And we're just reacting and it's coming out sideways. And so to have a friend who can help you process that and just sit with it and not fix it. I think that if I could have moms do anything, it's like, stop advising each other, stop shooting on each other, stop giving each other podcasts they should listen to. Just be with them, ask them how they feel, and then ask them what they need. And Townsend has a great book, People Fuel, that talks through all the different needs, whether it's, I need identification. Help me know that you understand this feeling. I need containment. I just need a space where I can just say all the things and I know that they're safe here. I just need you to give me, when I say I need you to give me advice, that's the window when you can give advice, but not before then.
Makes perfect sense, Heather. And I was thinking, like, as you were talking about mentoring, well, because I have 4 kids in a 10-year age span, when I'm hanging out with moms of my 2 younger boys, I'm often a step or 2 ahead of them, right? Because I have high school kids or I have a graduate, and it's really easy to give advice. So when you were talking about the mentor thing, I'm like, ooh, I do that all the time, but I do it without permission. So perhaps that's something to, like you said, don't should others if they haven't asked. That's a very important distinction.
Well, and you can know your relationship with your kids and you can know your journey, but you don't know their specific, and really, you don't know what's coming for them. Only God can. We're not omnipotent. We aren't all knowing, and we can't know what's right for that person. And so I think we do them a disservice sometimes when we base our advice off our experience and don't listen and help them process for their own.
Right. So listening, processing, talking about feelings, waiting for the door to open to be that mentor to a friend, all very good reminders. Now, Heather, in your book, Don't Mom Alone, each chapter ends with like a 2-part sort of hinge structure. So you examine an isolating idea and then you flip it to a connecting truth. And I'm so curious why you chose that structure, and like maybe give us one little example.
So it was an accidental structure because when I said yes to writing Don't Mom Alone, I had no framework or outline because I was going to write that other book first. And so I was just like, what is this going to be about? And then I started realizing that the thing that kept me from community were these lies I was believing about motherhood or about myself or about other people. And that I really did need truth to help bring me back into relationship with others, to help allow me to not let into that feeling of loneliness and pulling away. And so one that I think resonates with a lot of people is I'm fully responsible for how my children turn out. And that shows up in all kinds of things, whether you have an adult child or you have a 2-year-old. We start to say, oh my gosh, he just hit a kid with a train. He's going to prison. It's all my fault. I was at a music class and one of my boys hit another kid with a shaker. And she goes, where did he learn that? I'm like, at home when I hit him with shakers? No, like he just is a kid with a lot of energy and he took it out on another kid. But the connecting truth is I'm important, but I'm not essential into who my child is becoming. And it's like, and that's a hard pill to swallow. I've said that on podcasts and I've had the hosts argue with me, but I truly believe that you are important. Otherwise, I wouldn't be helping minister to moms if they had no value. They have value. We have value. We have input. Our relationships matter. But I also know we're not essential because I have friends whose birth moms have tragically passed away. When I have one friend, my friend Kat, her mom passed away when my friend Kat was 8 months old. That didn't mean the end of Kat's story. And there were other people who came alongside her father, her grandparents. He remarried. She's now this lovely woman of God who's serving him and has her own family. And so if her birth mom was not essential to her becoming, can we allow that same truth for ourselves and release the burden that it's all up to us and how our kids turn out?
You know, I won't be one of those podcast hosts that disagrees with you because there is so much truth to that. I mean, we can look around the world and see even some people who have risen to best-selling author or famous people who were neglected, abused as children. You know, not that the parent figure was absent and replaced, but like the parent figure was awful. And they still were able to heal through that or work through that, right? So all the bad things we do can be mitigated. The good things we do can be ignored. So yeah, we're there.
I hear we're about 30% responsible.
I read that.
The trick is you don't know which 30%. So just keep doing your best.
Yes, right. Like doing our best, but not holding ourselves to this golden impossible standard, implausible standard. So such good reminders. Just moms' hearts everywhere are just settling,
I hope,
and feeling better. And but then our kids will say something or do something that will unsettle our heart. And all the nice little feelings that we had after listening to the podcast go away and we snap at them. And I know that, Heather, you've been open about struggling with anger. Anger is my personal default emotion as well. So I'm with you there. But in the book, you've clearly done some work because you describe anger as a tool for identifying problems, but not for solving them. So how is anger a tool? Tell us more.
Yeah, I would say anger was not something that was a part of my personality prior to having kids. I was a speech pathologist who worked with kids who were diagnosed with autism and who had cochlear implants, and I had so much patience. But my own children, and like I said, the overwhelm of 4 little boys that you can't control, and only moms of 4 boys, maybe 5 boys, would get the exponential energy of a boy. My sensory system just went into overload, and I think I struggled because I knew anger was not what I wanted, how I wanted to show up. I didn't want to, and anger again, itself isn't wrong. It's what we do with the anger that becomes the problem. So anger is just one of those primary emotions. We're made in the image of God. It is not the problem, but we are unfortunately sinful. And we then move from that place of anger, which is a very energizing, powerful emotion. So it makes us feel like we're in charge, but it really shuts down and it cuts off relationship with those around us. And so this book, Good and Angry by Scott Turansky and Joanne Miller, was the first one that said, anger is great at helping you identify problems, but not solve them. It's like this indicator that something's wrong, whether it's me and my expectations are too high, or I'm not really aware of what's developmentally normal for my boys. I'm maybe even in my body, I'm just starting to realize like my sensory system was flipping into fight or flight and not really doing the work to keep my body in a calm state, like that polyvagal theory. Do some research on that. That's really good.
So good. Yeah.
Staying in that window of tolerance, like I had to do work to get to a calm place. My environment was chaotic. That was true. There were triggers everywhere. That was true. But I could only control myself. And in order to get into control, I needed to recognize, okay, the problem is I'm overwhelmed. I've overstimulated. What can I do to calm my own body down, whether in this situation? And also sometimes it helps you identify if you're having a recurring anger situation with a kid, it could be a character thing that you need to work through with them. And just continually yelling and saying, stop it, is not going to help refine their character. And they give great ideas and tips on how to work through a variety of issues that could be more character related.
And of course, you're better able to see that anger as the red flag that it is, instead of leaning into it and turning it into behavior if you're filling your cup, right, with connection.
Oh, yeah.
if you have mentors to talk things over with, if you're getting on the same page with your spouse, it all kind of comes together. And we've talked about how this is difficult. I'm really curious to hear if you think connection and the ability to make friends, keep friends, have mentors, it has become like a life skill that we need to teach our kids and teens because it's hard for them too.
I think a lot of times these things are more caught than taught. So I know for me, I was just even reflecting my mom, my dad passed away in 2017, and I was thinking about how she cultivated a community in her new city because they had to move away from Costa Rica when they came here for treatment. Then he passed away, and then she moved to Florida, and she just celebrated her 80th birthday, and she had all these friends over. And for Valentine's Day, like, she has card groups, and I just think I've always seen them model having people over, putting themselves out there, creating environments where they are connecting, whether it was through people at church or through various interests. And so that's what I've done. And I think I haven't like overtly said, this is how you connect with people.
Right.
But just modeling that and seeing that that's the habit or that's a high value for our family is what kind of guides it for your kids.
That's beautiful. And modeling, I mean, that is a form of teaching, but that also underscores the fact that we do have to do it. So if there's a mom out there who's listening who thinks, I'm that isolated person, I am in the 50% who's in the epidemic of loneliness and I don't even know how to do this. The beautiful side benefit of doing this well for yourself is that your kids can then watch you, right? Your kids can watch you learn, and it can become part of their language, their family culture, their habits. And so when they are adults and maybe realize, oh my goodness, I'm kind of lonely, they have the skills. They know what to do. Whereas I do think because we have an epidemic of loneliness, probably fewer and fewer kids and teens are catching this, are having it modeled. Potentially. And we don't know. I mean, we're so technology is changing so quickly. Smartphones and teenagers are just like an active situation going on right now. We don't know how to deal with them. Then you have
all these college kids who are choosing against it. So I'm curious if it'll be like smoking, where it was like so, obviously bad for us, but it was so part of the culture that then there was this backlash, and it was almost like looked down upon if you had that habit. I think I'm curious to see if their generation pushes so hard against it and it becomes this like negative thing. I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful. I've always said that my prayer is that 10, 20 years down the road, people see pictures of toddlers in strollers with their parents' phone and think, oh, no, those terrible people were doing that, like that it would be like seeing a toddler with a cigarette. We can hope. Yeah. We can hope and pray. So before we close, tell us about podcast clubs a little bit. And do you recommend that people do that? Is that a practical tip to form those connections?
We've kind of let it be this organic thing based off the one listener who came up with the idea, but we provide discussion questions, and we have a Facebook group where if you really are struggling to figure out what to do or how to do it, there are people there. I honestly have no clue how many groups there are out there. I don't know which ones are active, but I think if you are looking for an excuse, you're like, I want to get together with people. I don't know how. One of my ideas, which I haven't implemented, is I want to get those signs that go in your yard, kind of like when your house goes for sale.
Yeah.
That says podcast club, Don't Mom Alone podcast club meeting this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Listen to episode whatever. And they could just put it out front, and then neighbors could come by. So it could be a way to gather just with the people in your neighborhood, that proximity piece of friendship. But I think it's just whoever, it could be one other friend. Hey, let's listen to this one episode and let's talk about it.
On a walk, of course.
And on a walk. Hey, you listen to it while you're doing dishes, and I'll listen to it while I'm folding laundry. And then when we get together, we can talk about it. And it may not be what you actually talk about, but it's just a jumping off point.
Yeah. It's a cool idea. And I'm already percolating ooh, could I encourage my audience to do the same thing? Why not? If all podcasts came with discussion questions like books do, maybe we'd have more podcast clubs. I think it's fantastic. I love it. Heather, I love to leave parents with one super practical tip that they can do. So if you were to tell a mom out there today, do this to build connection, what would it be?
I think she needs to be a curious observer of herself.
Ooh. That was surprising. Unpack that, please.
Well, I think that there were so many things we talked about that I think for the mom listening, where she's stuck is going to be different than where I am or where you are. And so I'd love for her to just be curious, not judgmental, watch herself, notice patterns. Where could she maybe be sabotaging herself? Where could she maybe be missing a connection opportunity? Sometimes women come to me, they're like, I don't have any friends. I'm like, okay, just pray the next few weeks that God would just open your eyes. And it is amazing. They come back to me, they're like, oh, I remembered this and this and this and this. So be this observer. What's going on in you? What needs attention? What are those, when we talked about anger, like what's that indicator that's going off that you need a little help and support and you're missing? Maybe in your marriage, maybe in your mentor needs. Friendship may not be the thing, but.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for all of this encouragement. Heather MacFadyen has been the guest today. Go get her book from the library, from Amazon, from bookshop.org, wherever you buy books. Maybe go to a store where you could rub shoulders with someone else. Don't Mom Alone is book number 1. Right Where You Belong is another wonderful book from Heather that we didn't even have time to talk about, but they are both fantastic. Thank you so much for being here, Heather.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Healthy Parenting Handbook podcast. I hope your brain feels fed and your heart feels full and that you feel connected, knowing that there are other parents on this journey with you. We're just trying to raise healthy, independent adults. And the next time you think, man, there is no handbook for this job. Now there is the Healthy Parenting Handbook. Look up the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please leave a review, my friends, as that helps other parents who need this information to find us. And of course, subscribe. That's a huge help. You can also look for our shorts as a reel on Instagram at Katie Kimball Kids Cook, or subscribe to the Healthy Parenting Handbook Shorts channel on YouTube. You'll get those bite-sized portions of healthy parenting advice.